All right, so Ms. Muse here going through a few examples of algebra-related EQAO questions. So I pulled this question from a past exam. Let's take a look at it. It says, which value of x makes the equation 1 plus root of x equals 10 true? Well, there are all sorts of strategies that you can use here, but I'm going to suggest to you that what you might want to do is try to find the value of x that they give you that makes the left side of this equation equal to the right side. That's really what they're asking here. And so trial and error will get you there. So I'm going to show you how you would go about that. So I'm going to use b as our first example. I'm going to just use that. And so really what they're saying is, if I put 9 in for x, does that make the left side equal to the right side of this equation? So 1 plus root of, and instead of x, I'm going to put the value 9 there for part B, because that's what the answer is. So I want to know if that is the value of x here. All right, so let's look. So 1 plus root 9. So root 9, you can use your square root button on your calculator to figure it out, or you can use mental math by saying, well, what number multiplied by itself will give me 9? That number is 3, because 3 times 3 gives me 9, so the square root of 9 is 3. Right? So is 1 plus 3 equal to 10? No, that tells me that B, not my answer. Let's take a look at another one. So I know that I need to go higher, so that tells me that 3 is not going to work. Right? I need a number that's going to be higher. I need a higher square root in order to make the left side equal to the right side. So I'm going to get rid of that. And so I'm going to try D. Let's give that a whirl. So 1 plus the square root of whatever x is. I'm deciding here to try 81. So let's try 81. And I want to know if that's equal to 10. So again, if you don't know mentally what the square root of 81 is, go ahead and use your calculator. I know that the square root of 81 is 9. And I know that because 9 times 9 gives me 81. So 1 plus 9 will give me 10. There, I've got it. My left side equals my right side. D is my answer. Good to go. Let's try another question. So this question says the equation D equals 3.6 times root of h represents the relationship between the distance D and the person can see in an open field in kilometers and the person's height in meters. Right? So one afternoon, Amy can see a distance of 4.5 kilometers. Which of the following is closest to Amy's height? All right. So let's analyze this a little bit, because there's a lot of words there. I would start by, instead of trying to figure out what's going on, highlight the important parts, and that will help you focus. Right? So I know that here's my equation. I also know that the D in that equation is distance, right? So let's see if I can see any other distance. Here it is. There's a distance of 4.5 kilometers, right? And I want to know in this question, I want to know what the height is. What is the closest to Amy's height? So really what they're asking me in this question is figure out what the height is if the distance is 4.5 kilometers. So let's try to work that out. This is going to require some algebra skills. Let's see what we can do. So I know that the distance is going to be equal to 3.6 times the square root of whatever the height is, right? But they're telling me that they want to know her height when she can see a distance of 4.5 kilometers. So I'm going to put 4.5 in the place of distance here. And then try to work out the rest. So 3.6 times the square root of the height. So a couple ways that I can do this. There are a couple different ways that I can do this. I can go ahead and I can try to substitute in some values to make the left side equal to the right side, and just like we did in the last question. And that will work fine. So let's maybe try that strategy. Alternatively, if you're comfortable with algebra, you can try to solve this by isolating your h. So I can show both of those ways. If you want to see me solve it using algebra, I'm more than happy to do that. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, I'm going to substitute these values in to see if where it makes the left side equal to the right side. Okay, so 4.5 is equal to 3.6 times the square root of h. So let's just see. I'm going to try the 2.5 here, and that'll tell me whether I need to go higher or lower. So 2.5, and so I'm going to just work this out on my calculator. So when I worked this out, when I plugged in 2.5, that's this guy right here, into the equation, I got a value of 5.7 on the right side of this equation, right? So working all of this out. So that is obviously not my answer. 2.5 is not the answer. And so by trial and error, I can go ahead and I can substitute each of these in. These are actually pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to instead try this with another value. So as it turns out, when I go ahead and plug in 1.6 for my height, I end up getting 4.5 as luck would have it. So that what that tells me, because I'm seeing that a value of 1.6 for height gives me a distance of 4.5 kilometers, that tells me that in fact B was my answer for this question. All right, so in this next question, it looks like they're asking me to multiply these polynomials. And so, let's take a stab at this. Let's see how this goes. All right, so I know that I need to take whatever value is outside of my brackets and multiply it by both of the terms on the inside. So the negative 2x times the first term and this last term here. So let's work that out. So first of all, I see I have negative 2x times negative 4x. Now I know a negative times a negative always gives me a positive. So any value that has a negative in the first term does not make sense. So I'm going to get rid of those right away. So next, let's work out the first term. So I know negative 2 times negative 4 gives me 8, positive 8, and then x times x gives me x squared. Good. Now let's look at the next part. Negative 2 times positive 3 gives me a negative 6, and the x times nothing gives me x. So I know that my answer is A. Next one. So now here's another one, but in this case, they're not asking me to multiply, they're asking me to combine like terms. And so I'm going to just switch to a highlighting tool. And so I'm going to highlight in the same color all the terms that are like terms. So I see an x squared, and here's another x squared. And remember, the sign in front of the term tells you whether you're adding or subtracting that. So now I also have some terms with some x's in them. I have negative 4x and plus 2x. And then lastly, I have some constant terms. So I'm going to add 5 and then negative 1 together to simplify. So now let's take a look at what we have. So I have 3x squared. Take away an x squared. That will leave me with 2x squared. So I can get rid of c and d right off the bat. Now let's look at my second term. So negative 4 plus 2, so negative 4x plus 2x will give me negative 2x. So that right away, I don't even have to go through my last term to figure this out. But again, if you're ever in doubt, take a look at the last term. If you're not sure about what's going on here. 5 minus 1 gives me 4. So that should easily help me figure out that my answer needs to be A in this case. All right, so in this case, this looks a lot like Pythagorean Theorem. So the easiest strategy here is to just work it out, I think, except that, it may be easier to even just use our common sense to eliminate certain possibilities, right? So when I look here, I know that whatever's on this side of my equation, right, if I'm considering the Pythagorean Theorem to be c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, I know the c squared represents the length of my hypotenuse, and it always has to be the longest side. So anything that is shorter than or equal to 6 and 10 Has to go. So that tells me right off the bat that A and B are not reasonable answers here. Okay, so now the rest goes to, is it 12 or is it 16? So let's work that out to see. So I know that c squared is equal to 6 squared plus 10 squared. 6 squared is 36. And 10 squared is 100. Right, so let's clean this up. So c squared, I know, is equal to 136. So remember, now I need to undo that square by doing the opposite operation, which is to take the square root. Whatever I do to one side of my equation, I'm going to need to do to the other side. So all I need to do now is figure out what the square root is of 136. Now, you may already know what the square root is, or what the square of 12 is. And if you know that, that will help you figure this out. So we're looking for the closest value in this case. And so the closest value is going to be 12 here, because my answer ends up being actually 11.66. So if I round that to the nearest whole, the closest value is 12. And there it is. So those are a few reminders of how you might see questions in EQAO and how you might solve them.